For more than 3 decades, the USS Albuquerque has played a key role in the U.S. Navy's arsenal, earning the reputation as the sure shooter of the fleet. In fact, the Albuquerque, which called Naval Base Point Loma home, was one of the first U.S. nuclear submarines to see combat. Now, after all those years of service, the ship is being decommissioned. Recently, I had the opportunity to spend the day on board the sub and visit with its crew, who gave me a glimpse of what life is like on a nuclear-powered submarine.
Dive. Submerged ship to 150 feet.
Submerged ship to 150 feet. Dive, Mike.
Dive. When the commanding officer gives the order to dive, the control room can be a very intense place. But on the surface, a more peaceful scene. Escorted by a tug, the USS Albuquerque comes into view. Once the ship is portside, a Navy officer comes out to greet us. My crew, KUSI Chief Photographer Mike Smith and producer Doug Friedman, wait to board. A narrow hatch and a 10-foot ladder leads to the hull.
Down ladder. Tight squeeze.
Finally, our first glimpse of life on board a nuclear-powered sub. It's unlike anything you might have seen in the movies.
Con radio, receiving transmission on extremely low frequency receiver, sir.
The Albuquerque isn't nearly as glamorous, and there's a lot less room to move around. This submarine is the real deal.
Just to give you an idea how tight this sub really is, unlike a movie, A Hunt for Red October, any of the movies you see involving submarines, look at this. I'm going to stand up here just a minute. This is my foot. I wear about a 10.5 size shoe. That's the space you got in a lot of quarters down here to walk.
The USS Albuquerque is classified as a Los Angeles fast attack nuclear-powered sub. It's armed with 4 launch tubes, which can fire torpedoes and Tomahawk cruise missiles, and can operate at a depth of at least 800 feet. It's also home to 140 crew members.
100 feet.
We'll be diving at a 400-foot CSOE down to 150 feet. So the dive comp is entered, so I intended to switch the ship to 150 feet.
Very low.
More than a dozen highly skilled Navy personnel carry out the commander's orders.
This is a very small craft, wouldn't expect to be held in radar.
The guys who operate the periscopes are vital to each mission.
His job right now is to look around for contacts, be the lookout, as you would say. He's spinning around on the scope, watching for other boats, make sure we're not going to run into anything. We're also trying to get as far away from other contacts as possible.
Nearby, technicians keep an eye on these screens. They're looking for suspicious activity, both above and below the surface. On the other side of the room, a 2-member dive team steer the sub. It's almost like driving a car. Instead of looking out a windshield, they're watching the gauges in front of them. Commissioned back in 1983, the Albuquerque was considered one of the finest in the Navy's fleet. Its missions have been lengthy. Sometimes the crew didn't see daylight for several months at a time. Commanding Officer Don Tenney.
We're capable of everything from intelligence gathering to projecting power inland. When you're down in the torpedo room, you notice that we carry not only advanced capability Mark 48 torpedoes, but also Tomahawk land attack missiles. So those missiles are capable of projecting power hundreds of miles inland.
Because of her success in the heat of the battle, the sub has earned a prestigious honor among the fleet.
She's also known as the sure shooter of the fleet because she has a history of being the highest percentage of successful Tomahawk shots during the Kosovo conflict.
The Albuquerque has also been deployed in the dangerous waters in the Middle East, where tensions remain high.
We were in the Indian Ocean and in that area, but did not have to enter the Gulf. That's a very challenging area to operate in.
Why is that?
High contact density and shallow water there. A lot of people are interested in the Gulf because of the resources around that area. And so we do operate there. It's important for us to be able to operate there, but it's an extremely challenging area to work in.
But Commander Tenney is confident when the sub was called into action.
There are a lot of things we're paying close attention to, and that's one of the reasons we operate in those areas. We want to make sure that our submarines are comfortable operating in those parts of the world, so that if tensions rise rapidly, we're not only ready, but able to operate there for an extended period of time.
And if needed, they can unleash powerful weapons that leave devastating results.
It's kind of a hunter-killer submarine, so our mission is to hunt
The original mission of the submarines was to hunt out other enemy countries' submarines and track them down. Either their attack submarines or their ballistic missile submarines, and put them down with torpedoes.
And the ship's cruise missiles can also target the enemy on land hundreds of miles away.
Tomorrow night, we will hear from the crew who are assigned to maintain and launch those Torpedo and Tomahawk cruise missiles at a moment's notice. And you'll also see what it's like for the men who must sleep within just a few feet of those deadly weapons 24/7.
So months at a time they never surface. You have to wonder, how do they live
It's
like
tough
that?
because, you know, they don't have any outside communication when you're 600, 700, 800 feet down. So that means they can't, you know, communicate through email with their families or anything, or even with Naval Command. But aside from talking about the torpedoes tomorrow night, we're also going to take a look over the next couple of nights at how they sleep, how they eat, what they, you know, and how they spend their spare time.
Right.
Because they've got, you know, even though they work in shifts and they work long hours, they've still got some downtime.
It's a whole different way of life.
It is.
Fascinating.
Certainly. Yeah.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Alan.
Have you ever wondered what it's like to spend several months on board a submarine? Tonight, in part 2 of my special report on the USS Albuquerque, we take a look at how sailors adjust to the tight quarters. We also visit the crew assigned to make sure the sub's cruise missiles are ready to fire at a moment's notice.
It's an awesome sight. Cruise missiles are a vital part of naval warfare. The USS Albuquerque carries several Tomahawk cruise missiles and torpedoes. Naval Officer Lieutenant Commander Mike Mowry takes us to the torpedo room and explains how the missiles are fired.
Okay, this is actually a horizontal launch Tomahawk missile. The missile itself is inside of this canister. And then this is a Mark 48 Ed Cap torpedo.
This is the torpedo.
This is a torpedo, yes.
And we hook a hydraulic rammer to the aft end of the torpedo, and it actually pushes it into the tube. We use air to just push it out.
A 4-man crew is stationed here at all times. It's their job to make sure the missiles are ready to fire at a moment's notice.
Can you feel that torpedo being fired?
Oh yes, most certainly. You'd be able to feel the whole boat will shake a little bit.
And that makes it tough for other crew members who are trying to get some sleep. The jolt usually wakes them up. But for the guys down here, well, it's a different story.
And the crew actually sleeps right next to these things, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. There's all these black curtains. We set up the black curtains for guys. They sleep next to the torpedoes.
This seems like it's next to impossible to get used to.
Yeah, guys. You know, you'll find a lot of guys sleep on their backs or on their stomachs. There's not a lot of room to sleep on your sides.
The space is just as tight in the executive officers' quarters.
You can see that you've got enough room to sleep, but you better not wake up from a deep sleep in a hurry, because that's what's going to happen right there. You're going to bump your head real quick.
Most of the guys refer to these bunks as coffins. You're forced to lay flat and still. Just around the corner, we come upon the auxiliary machinery room. The sub is powered by a nuclear reactor in the engine room, but that was restricted. This red 8-cylinder diesel engine serves as a backup source of electrical power if anything fails with the reactor.
Also, what we can use it for is desmoking of compartments in case of a casualty. If we have toxic gas or smoke filling a compartment, we can use the diesel to rapidly desmoke or degas that area.
Before the Albuquerque deploys, she's packed with food, the most critical necessity when the crew spends several months under the surface.
This right here is our refrigeration plant. Usually when we deploy, we make 2 large freezers and we jam them full and eat our way back.
From the freezer to the mess hall,
Burger day.
the cooks are hard at work, serving up 4 meals a day for a crew of 140. Cooking for all these sailors starts early in the morning. Life on a submarine, especially long deployments, can be tiring, but the men have learned to adapt.
So you're on board this sub for 7 months at one time.
Yep, we pull into a few ports here and there. You know, if you're lucky, maybe we'll pull in long enough, you can get a hotel room and get off the boat for a night or 2.
When they're not on rotating shifts, the crew finds a variety of ways to pass their free time.
You guys do a variety of things. I guess the same things that you do, you know, normally at home. A lot of guys like to read. A lot of guys get into reading. A lot of guys get into working out. Work out real hard as much as they can. Try and get.
You have a weight room?
No, certainly not. A lot of guys bring their personal computers when we're on deployment. They'll play video games, watch movies, watch TV shows.
I imagine poker is also pretty popular
A lot
too.
of guys play poker. Submarine game, cribbage is kind of a traditional submarine card game that we play.
The phone call was a signal to hold on tight. We were about to experience a maneuver that would tilt the sub upward at a 25-degree angle. Everything is locked down, so nothing moved. Lieutenant Commander Chris Brown.
Right now we're at about 650 feet. So we'll be putting an angle on the ship to come up. You're going to change depth of about 400 feet very rapidly.
And you can see how steep this is as we're trying. I mean, it's like walking up the side of a mountain or something. You can't even hardly move. I don't know about you, Mike, but I can't. I'm having to hold on.
And now we'll do a 25-degree dive.
And here we go. Everybody hangs on while the sub noses downward.
This is a weird feeling, I got to tell you. It is a weird feeling.
We finally leveled off at 600 feet. A few minutes later, Captain Tenney gave the order to surface.
Wow, what a view. What a view.
When we climbed out of the sail, the scene was breathtaking.
Wow, it was really breathtaking. Now, tomorrow night, in the final part of my special report, we go topside for an unbelievable view from the ship's sail. We'll also experience the uphill motion and downhill motion of the 25-degree dive, which we saw just a minute ago. Plus, we're going to bid farewell to the USS Albuquerque as she leaves Naval Base Point Loma to be decommissioned. One other thing I want to note, we didn't get this in this particular piece, but when we boarded the sail, we all, Doug, myself, and Mike, were given these styrofoam cups.
Right.
And these were placed in the sail, which is not a part of the pressure hold, which, you know, doesn't get the pressure up there. So standard size cup right here. Look what the pressure did to these cups. I mean, it shrunk them down to, I mean, what, about half the size?
Yes.
And we were only at about, I think, 600 feet. So when the sub dives to, the captain told me, say 900 feet or more, these things will be about like this right here. So that's what the pressure would do to a human being, is just, you know, shrink you down to nothing. Of course, you're dead.
Right, right.
Yeah,
Wow.
But yeah, it's amazing.
Physical evidence of the power.
Yeah, they gave us these at the end of the trip to say this is what
A souvenir.
Yeah, would have happened if you guys had been in the sail.
And you really were having to hold on as that sub made the tilt.
You know, and it was a lot steeper than it actually showed on there too. I mean, it was tough. Even the sailors were holding on to stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
Looking forward to tomorrow.
Yeah, you bet.
The USS Albuquerque has a long history of serving the Navy as one of the top fleet subs in the fleet, but now she's headed for decommissioning. Tonight, in the final part of my special report, we talked to a San Diego sailor who credits the Navy for turning his life around. I also got to go topside on the sail, where we had an amazing view of the San Diego coastline as the ship headed for port.
This is an awesome view from up here. We're on top, we're on the sail, right?
That's correct, we are on the sail.
Of the USS Albuquerque. How far offshore are we from San Diego?
About 10 miles right now, 10 nautical miles.
And we're traveling at what speed?
About 10 miles per hour or 8 knots.
A magnificent view as we stood on the sail, a small platform that rises above the hull of the sub. The waters of the Pacific glisten 20 feet below us. Even though the winds were calm, we were strapped to these ropes and hooks just in case someone slipped. The ship's crew comes up here routinely to inspect the equipment.
Down here at the bow of the ship, we do have part of our sonar sensors.
They also check out the periscopes, which are so powerful they can zoom in on the deck guns on this Navy ship, which was spotted a few miles away.
This one has kind of like a night vision that you see in like the TV, video games, all that kind of stuff. This one has infrared. This one has more magnification. You can see farther with the number 2 scope than the number 1 scope.
In the haze off in the distance, we caught a glimpse of San Diego's shoreline. Occasionally, a boat came by to snap some pictures of the sub. The Albuquerque only surfaces when it approaches friendly ports. That's when the ship is able to reestablish communications with Naval Command.
Just a big stick that sticks out of the water that we can communicate on, and that's our high data rate communications antenna, so that's how we get the fastest communications.
It was now time to go back down after close to an hour topside. Back in the ship, we met up with San Diego native Tony Ojeda. He's been in the Navy for 6 years.
So I joined when I was about 22 years old.
Ojeda, who is a first-class petty officer, he's assigned to the engine room as an electrician's mate. He credits the Navy for turning his life around.
I was a very undisciplined young man, and but now the Navy's provided me with set skills,
which includes working on his bachelor's degree. The Navy has also given him the opportunity to see the world.
I've been to Thailand, Japan, Guam, Saipan.
But sailors like Ojeda know the situation can change quickly, especially in the Middle East, where the fighting continues to escalate.
Iran, Iraq, Russia not so much. China would like to push into those areas, we think, but really it's the United States and most of the local countries that operate in those waters right now. The United States is building about 2 submarines a year, the Virginia class.
As we get closer to sunset, the USS Albuquerque returns to port, and our day's journey at sea draws to an end. The Albuquerque's crew is still hard at work, checking lines and prepping the ship for its voyage to Washington. Now, nearing the end of its life in the Navy, an inactivation ceremony was held a few days later at Naval Base Point Loma for the USS Albuquerque. And a few days after that, the sub arrived in Puget Sound, Washington, where it will be decommissioned.
It's actually a fairly long process. It will take us just about a year to do the decommissioning. The decommissioning of the submarine is really just the shutting down of all the systems inside the ship and also defueling the nuclear reactor.
And what about the crew?
The majority of my crew will actually remain with the ship through the end of decommissioning, but over the course of the next year, about a third of the crew will be detailed or sent to other jobs.
The captain also hopes to get another assignment.
I'd love to be commander of another submarine, but that remains to be seen. Again, those personnel managers, they're waiting to figure out what they can do with me.
Spending time on the USS Albuquerque was a moving experience that gave me an even greater appreciation and awe for the people who devote their lives to keeping us safe. The sailors who work here don't question that mission for a second. For their dedication, knowledge, and hard work, we owe them a debt of gratitude. And we salute them for their sacrifice and their service to help preserve our freedom.
Well, without a doubt, it was a thrilling experience, one I'll never forget. Again, our thanks to the crew of the USS Albuquerque and the commanders at Naval Base Point Loma for giving us the opportunity to see what life is like firsthand on board a nuclear-powered submarine. And a lot of the crew will be remaining with the sub as it enters Puget Sound to help dismantle the sub, especially the nuclear reactor, which those guys are specialized. They know all about it. So taking that apart is pretty critical.
Oh, I bet. And for everyone who maybe didn't get to see the first 2 parts of Allen's special, you can go to KUSI.com and check it out.
You bet. Good deal.